I study scrolls from the library in Nag-Hammadi, discovered in 1945 by Muhammad Ali. Also books that were unearthed within the Qumran community, as many fight to shield the truth and try to keep it from you and me. Ancient secrets that were first toppled on an Egyptian plateau that would one day find themselves underneath Renla's chateau. Knowledge once buried info carried from Solomon's temple. Stories vary, some of them scary, but all of them simple. Look into my eyes, there's no surprise that I've got a slight temper towards the lies in disguise of the modern day Knights Templar. Realize from the size of the recognized architecture that the wise have hidden prize that could hypnotize and spark a lecture. I don't need to preach, but to teach that each founding father, dream and prophecy and demonocracy should have been drowned in water. From King George VI passing his town and crown to his daughter, as many climate degrees drop her to their knees, bowing down to her garter. How many times, how many rhymes, how many crimes need to be committed till you'll admit that they were behind it? Don't be blinded or narrow-minded. Become one of the pharaoh kind kids, posing Freemasons from America's commander-in-chief. The Nova Scotia's Alexander Keith, like Captain Morgan, that panhandler and thief. So what's more important than a Mayan calendar belief? Exposing Freemasons from America's commander-in-chief. The Nova Scotia's Alexander Keith, like Captain Morgan, that panhandler and thief. So what's more important than a Mayan calendar belief? You better make sure that the laces of your Pumas are tight, cause if the rumors are right, the Loomis and Knight have got the baby boomer consumers in fright with their continuous bright luminous light. You better make sure that the laces of your Pumas are tight, cause if the rumors are right, the Loomis and Knight have got the baby boomer consumers in fright with their continuous bright luminous light. I get an actual pleasure exposing Disney's national treasure. Somebody pinch me. Everybody's trying to decipher the code of Da Vinci. Sacred geometry, math that you measure. Hard technology is some laugh at the weather. From their chapters and their lodges, men act as if they know who God is. They're the hidden hand, take a forbidden land, never giving a damn if you sit or stand, they spit on man. How many times, how many rhymes, how many crimes need to be committed till you'll admit that they were behind it? Don't be blinded or narrow-minded. Become one of the pharaoh kind kids, posing Freemasons from America's commander-in-chief. The Nova Scotia's Alexander Keith, like Captain Morgan, that panhandler and thief. So what's more important than a Mayan calendar belief? Exposing Freemasons from America's commander-in-chief. The Nova Scotia's Alexander Keith, like Captain Morgan, that panhandler and thief. So what's more important than a Mayan calendar belief? They brought Cleopatra's needles to the real axis of evil. Rebuilt St. Paul's Cathedral to become Jerusalem's equal. In times of medieval great minds that are deceitful, grapevines that are more lethal than hate crimes upon the people. Like the often forgotten cards of Akhenaten's guards. There's no stopping these topics that are dropping like shotgun shards, directed towards the so-called prophets of Scotland Yard, who taught me the arts by unlocking charts and filling their shopping carts. Come on, we've all seen the surface disguised as greedy merchants, erecting the obelisk penis perfect so they could feed us worship, never really releasing their grip, as Miss Liberty's allowed to introduce her whip and reinterpret history into pure shit. There is a list of men from Francis Bacon to Christopher Wren, and since I can no longer put my fist into them, I choose to get pissed with a pen. Now tell me, have y'all been listening?
Alright, what's going on everybody out there in Radio Land? This is Mark Youngworth from We Are Change Oshkosh, aka Derek in the Midwest. And I am back again here at slimswazy.com. It is 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7:05 to be exact. And you can catch me here every Wednesday and Sunday evening from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time doing this show called In Search of the Truth. And tonight will be a continuation of my last show's broadcast. There are things that I was going to get into last show that simply because I was covering the amount of information that I had to cover, and I had to include certain information in a certain order, keeping things together so it would all make sense, and while maintaining getting all the information out in that one particular show that I needed to get out. So tonight what I'll be doing is covering some information that I didn't get to on the last show, and this is equally as important in all reality as the last show that I did. This is just more information. It'll give you a whole bunch of background into the history of this whole thing, how long it's been going on, what has been occurring, things of that nature. So that's what we're going to be getting into this evening, and I will be checking the news throughout the show. Maybe I'll have some articles to cover as well. If there's any newsworthy pieces out there, I will try to cover that. And tonight, what we're going to be doing is starting here. The We Are Change NYC saga continues. And tonight, this is going to be kind of like a prequel. We're going to go back to the beginning of the history of We Are Change. And we're going to look at how We Are Change started, who started We Are Change, the mysterious death of one of the founders of the original New York 9/11 Truth Organization, which basically turned into We Are Change. And there are a lot of very interesting and mysterious things that we're going to be covering this evening. So, without further ado, let's just dive right into the information. Basically, the deal is the original group that was investigating 9/11 was called New York 9/11 Truth. And that group was started by a young man by the name of Dan Wallace. Now, Dan Wallace was a first responder and also was a victim's family member, as I believe one of his family members died as a first responder on 9/11. So he was a first responder and victim's family member. Now, Dan Wallace, because of his family member's death, began investigating the event of 9/11, and he started finding some completely unsavory things, that turned into the 9/11 Truth movement. And so Dan Wallace was the kind of guy who, he was completely legit. He wasn't one of these guys who was in the movement to corrupt it. He was a legitimate victim's family member, and he had every reason to keep going, until he was in a casket and to never stop. And there are some things we're going to find out about Dan Wallace that make his death even more suspicious than the facts that surround it, as far as, the how goes. Now, Dan Wallace came to a very untimely death. It's very unexpected. And he had breathing problems, did Dan Wallace, because of the fact that he inhaled the debris which the media had lied to everybody about. Said, yeah, go down and help out. Help pull, people out of the debris and help dig through ground zero and help us clean up and get the city back in order. Yeah, come down and help us out. The air is safe to breathe, is what the people of New York were told. So people went down there, and now today those people are dying by the thousands because they went down and helped out and did the right thing. And for the most part, they're not getting any sort of health care. Basically told, hey, you went down there on your own accord. No health care for you. We're not responsible. Now, the way in which Dan Wallace died is so extremely suspicious because of how and who are exactly involved in this scenario. And this is where we're going to begin. Dan Wallace was dating a young woman by the name of Sabrina Rivera. Sabrina Rivera said about Dan Wallace's death on February 8th, 2007, on the 911blogger.com forum. Title of her post was Answer to People's Question of How He Died. Hello everyone, this is Dan Wallace's girlfriend. First off, I would like to thank everyone for their support. All the love that I see from everyone has helped this family, his family and I, cope with losing him. I know a lot of you are curious to how and why he died. He simply just died because his heart stopped, and I am most certain that he died peacefully because I was the one who found him, and I know the one thing he loved just as much as the movement was sleep. Also, at his wake you can see a smile on his face. I hope to see everyone on Sunday, February 11th. Keep fighting for the truth. Much love, Sabrina. So, in that statement, Sabrina Rivera says that he just simply died because his heart stopped. Now, moving forward, as I stated earlier, and this is coming from an article at thepopulist.net, Dan Wallace was a member of the original New York 9/11 Truth Group who passed away on January 29th, 2007. Now, in this photo, Dan is on the left, pointing to Luke Rudowski. Just before his untimely death, Dan Wallace had scheduled speaking engagements in Las Vegas and other venues. There are persistent rumors on the internet that he was about to release a DVD. In short, Dan Wallace was a rising star in the 9/11 Truth movement. Dan's girlfriend, Sabrina Rivera, was with him the night that he died. Within weeks of Dan's passing, Luke created We Are Change. Sabrina became the treasurer of the new organization, and Luke and Sabrina shacked up together. This is completely true. Here is a statement from Dan's uncle. Quote, I do not know the full story of what happened to my nephew, but from what my family were told by Danny's girlfriend Sabrina Rivera, what I am about to tell you I am still so confused about because her story changed so much into what happened or what he or she did that night. Only Sabrina Rivera really knows. Sabrina's story, version 1. Danny stayed over at her house that night in Queens and was having trouble breathing. Sabrina Rivera thought nothing of it and just let him sleep, and in the morning she found him very blue and called 911. Version 2. Danny was having trouble sleeping, so he took some sleeping pills, was having trouble breathing. Sabrina Rivera thought nothing of it, so in the morning when she woke, she found him blue and not breathing. Sabrina Rivera's story, version 3. Sabrina Rivera and Danny had just got back from a party, and Danny had bought the pills at the party from someone, took them to help him fall asleep. He took one, then said these pills aren't working, so took about 15 or some stupid amount of these pills, and later that night was having trouble breathing. Sabrina Rivera waited till morning when she woke and saw he was blue and not breathing. Sabrina Rivera's story, version 4. Danny had bought these pills from the kid, and Sabrina Rivera is unsure how many pills he took or what kind they were, but the pills had some numbers on it. In the morning, she found him blue and not breathing. Now, the differences in all of those stories are pretty shocking. First, she says Danny stayed at her house and that he was having trouble breathing. Sabrina thought nothing of it, just let him sleep, and in the morning she found him very blue and called 911. Now, if you notice that he's having trouble breathing and you think nothing of it, I think that's pretty crazy. I mean, granted, I know that he had breathing problems anyways because he was a 9/11 first responder, but you would also think that if she noticed him having trouble breathing, meaning that most likely, not just having trouble breathing, because he has breathing problems, so that would be quite normal. So if she's saying that he was having trouble breathing, that means that he was having noticeably more trouble breathing than he would usually have. He wasn't just having trouble breathing like usual. He was having trouble breathing for Dan Wallace's, regular breathing, which was troubled in the first place. So if somebody who is having trouble breathing already, because that's just natural, is having even further trouble breathing, you would think that you'd be even more concerned to act on that situation. And her story is that she thought nothing of it and she just let him sleep, and in the morning she found him very blue and called 911. That's insane in itself to me. Then you have version 2. Danny was having trouble sleeping, so he took some sleeping pills and was having trouble breathing. Sabrina Rivera thought nothing of it, so in the morning she woke and she found him blue and not breathing. So now pills come into the equation, and they're sleeping pills. So he took some sleeping pills, was having trouble breathing. Again, she notices him having trouble breathing. So still, that's insane. She notices, even more trouble breathing than usual, of course. She just leaves him go, oh, no problem, whatever. And finds him blue in the morning, not breathing. Version 3, Sabrina Rivera and Danny had just got back from a party, and Danny had bought the pills at a party. So now there's more details. Now he bought the pills at a party from someone, took them to help him fall asleep. He took one, then he said these pills aren't working. So he took about 15 or some stupid amount of these pills more. Now that's a whole lot of details that none of the other explanations contained. And she says later that night he was having trouble breathing. Sabrina Rivera waited till morning when she woke and saw he was blue and not breathing. Now, let's see here. That contradicts obviously what she said earlier about their, um, let's see. Oh wait, no, that's the next. Okay, in that version, she doesn't even mention what kind of pills they were or if she knows. So that's even further interesting. It goes from no pills being involved in version 1, just, having trouble breathing, and then that's it, just woke up, called 911. Um, version 2, pills come into play, and she knows that they're sleeping pills. Version 3, pills come into play, but instead of being sleeping pills, the kind of pills aren't even mentioned. Um, it's it says that um, Danny bought the pills at the party and took them to help him fall asleep. Okay, so you could assume they were sleeping pills then. Help him fall asleep. Took one, then 15. Okay. Um, and then so then you got version. So it does say you could assume they're sleeping pills in version 3. For sure. And then 4 says Danny had bought these pills from a kid. Sabrina Rivera this is where it says she's unsure. Danny bought these pills from the kid, and Sabrina Rivera is unsure. Now she's unsure of how many pills he took or what kind they were, but the pills had some numbers on it. In the morning, she found him blue and not breathing. Now, that is just absurd. Those stories, the story should not change that much. Even if she was like flustered and, trying to, protect herself or something from getting, in trouble. Oh, who bought the pills at a party? And like, seriously, you're talking about somebody's death. Like, let's get the real story. And the fact that it changed not, once, not twice, but 3 times, making 4 versions, 4 different versions of events, that's extraordinarily suspicious. Then, now, and this is something that I have, I'm trying to confirm a detail. And actually, what I'm going to do is during the next break, I'm going to do some searching, and if I can confirm it, then I will let you know about it. Until then, I'm just going to sit on it because it's something that, like I said, I want to have like a link, or a source that I can give you guys first before I just throw it out there. All right, now this is from truthmove.org. Truthmove.org/forum/topic/267 #, or #, same thing, post-595. Truth Mover Administrator posts, he just completed a film. He's speaking of Dan Wallace, by the way. He just completed a film. Carol's blog, January 29th, 2007. Yesterday I received a phone call from Jeanette about one of the young speakers who was scheduled to come to Arizona, a son of a fireman who was killed on September 11th, who had just completed a film that he said he would send her. He was dead. The circumstances seemed mysterious, and Jeanette was shaken. So that's a real interesting piece of the puzzle as well. Now, it goes from being, the other article notice said he was rumored to have completed a film. This, on the other hand, said that he did absolutely just complete the film. So, I mean, that's, not proof of anything per se, but it looks very suspicious that Dan Wallace was killed before this film could get out. Because, again, look at Dan Wallace. Who is Dan Wallace? Dan Wallace is a real victim's family member of a first responder on 9/11. He was a first responder himself, suffered from breathing problems because of 9/11. Dan Wallace had every motivation on earth to keep going and to never stop. And he was about to release a film. Dan Wallace indeed was a rising star in the 9/11 truth movement, and with this film, he would have skyrocketed to the forefront of 9/11 truth, for sure, especially being a first responder himself. So, you have to ask yourself, Is it possible that Dan Wallace was murdered so that and I'm going to move on. This is we're going to go to forums.randy.org. It's forums.randy.org/archive/index.php/lowercase t dash 91092.html. And this is another forum. This is a post by somebody who calls himself Marky X. Marky X. I posted another thread on this because I started talking to one of Dan's relatives about the 9/11 deniers covering things up. However, I didn't expect such a detailed reply. Some parts of the email have been cut because I don't want to expose the person who sent the email. All I have to say is Luke of We Are Change has some questions that need to be answered. Alright. This is an email from one of the family members of Dan Wallace, and this particular family member actually does not have a very good opinion of the 9/11 Truth Movement in general, and the reason that he does not have a good opinion of the 9/11 Truth Movement in general, by his own statements, is because he has witnessed the dirty and underhanded tactics of the members of We Are Change and the 9/11 Truth Movement in general. People like Luke Rudowski and that those people that Dan Wallace was hanging out with and being partners with in research and activism at that time. So it's understandable then why you see now with Luke Rudowski and the charges of embezzlement and such, and we see the goings on in We Are Change NYC. And then he's saying that he's also been witness to their dirty tactics and the way that they, would cut certain things and cherry pick quotes and do certain things like that. And so he, was not convinced. He was not convinced that the 9/11 Truth Movement was correct because he saw certain people's dirty and underhanded tactics, even though in all reality, clearly 9/11 was an orchestrated event carried out by the New World Order. This particular relative of Dan Wallace does not believe that story because of the poor behavior and actions that he's seen from the people that are involved at the top of this movement. Think about that now. So we're going to get to this email. The email states, I only wish Danny could have been here to see these people turn things around and how they use people. Danny was a smart kid, very reasonable to talk with, and he would sit and listen to anyone's side of the story in a debate. But when he called me to look at the loose change video, I somewhat believed in some of it because I had no clue about anything loose change was telling me. So I kept an open mind and then did some research of my own. I also told Danny about some of my doubts, and he seemed to be so caught up in the movement for truth that he was almost blind to it. It was like they told him what to think. And when you are always with someone, this someone was Luke, that tells you how to think and always has something to say about what experts say, I guess you can be blinded. To me, Danny just wanted the truth, and he wanted the answer to why his father died. But he got caught up in these theories, and instead he was steered away from truth and blinded by these people. As far as how Danny died, the police say it was natural. What our family was told by the autopsy was because of an overdose of unknown pills, sleeping pills or downer pills. Our family is not sure what kind of pills he took, but because of a combination of that and his heart disease, which he were unaware of until his death, that is what caused his death. Heart disease and taking those pills. His girlfriend being Sabrina Rivera, was with him the night that he died. She is so heavily into the 911truth.org movement. I do not know the full story of what happened to my nephew, but from what my family, were told by Danny's girlfriend Sabrina, in parentheses, what I'm about to tell you, I am still so confused about because their story has changed so much into what happened or what he and she did that night, only Sabrina really knows. And again, this is where he goes over version 1. Danny stayed over at her house that night in Queens, was having trouble breathing. Sabrina thought nothing of it and just let him sleep, and in the morning she found him very blue and called 911. Version 2, Danny was having trouble sleeping, so he took some pills and was having trouble breathing. Sabrina thought nothing of it. In the morning she woke and found him blue but not breathing. Version 3, Sabrina and Danny had just got back from a party. Danny bought pills at the party from someone, took the pills to help him fall asleep. He took one, then said these pills aren't working, so he took about 15 or some stupid amount of these pills, and later that night was having trouble breathing. Sabrina waited till morning, when she woke and saw he was blue and not breathing. Version 4, Danny had bought these pills from this kid, and Sabrina is unsure how many pills he took or what kind they were, but the pills had some numbers on it. In the morning, she found him blue and not breathing. Now, ask yourself about Dan Wallace. Quite seriously, if his family members are saying that Dan's such a logical kind of guy and all that, then why would Dan Wallace take one pill and then, oh, these aren't working, and take 15 more? Does that make any sense to you at all? Because that's what Sabrina Rivera said in version 3 of her story, which makes zero sense. I mean, you take one pill, it doesn't work, maybe you take one or two tops, more. You don't take 15 more. No sane human being is going to do, such a thing, especially with some sort of pill that they know is some sort of, narcotic. That's absolutely ridiculous. And Dan Wallace had no reason to kill himself. Dan Wallace was trying to get to the truth about 9/11, trying to investigate how his family member was killed. And they want us to believe, and Sabrina Rivera wants us to believe, that Dan Wallace just willingly swallowed like 15 pills. I don't buy it. Not for a second. I don't buy it. I don't buy that they want us to believe this nonsense at all. Now, getting back to this email here. Now, after his death, our friends were telling all different kinds of things that Sabrina had told them what happened. These were the versions that I heard had happened. So many things went in my mind, theories. I wanted to put blame, but I don't know the truth. I do know that she knows more to what happened than she was telling us. But she did love Danny, and Danny did love her. She went out with Danny for years. I believe it was like 7 or 8. What really kills me though is I hear now she is currently with this Luke kid, the one that was supposed to be Danny's newly found best friend who dragged him into the 9/11 Truth movement. Now that's an interesting piece of information, isn't it? I am so outraged by this, but I keep quiet because of my family. And okay, further down in the email he says, also what got me was when Danny was alive, the 9/11 Truth Movement was telling Danny they will be making a movie about all of this, and he was going to be in the movie. It really seemed like they used Dan. Their videos on YouTube of Dan really show it. They use Danny and his father's name so they can push their own ideas on people. This is not a movement for truth, but a movement for their thoughts and propaganda to be pushed on the victims of 9/11 and the American people. Now, he says, and this is key, you know what really pisses me off about this? It's not that Luke lied about Dan's death or InfoWars using a corpse for their gains, but that I am completely unshocked by this entire situation. I've been dealing with these psychos for over a year and seen their tactics. This does not surprise me. And that tells you exactly why that man has the opinion of 9/11 Truth that he does, because these people operate in that fashion. These are their tactics, and this is how they operate. He saw that they were manipulative pricks, and that turned him off completely to the idea of 9/11 Truth. So way to go, Luke Radowski. What has he done for 9/11 Truth? Well, he's turned somebody away from 9/11 Truth who was a victim's family member of 9/11. That's what Luke Radowski has done for 9/11 Truth. Now moving on further down this thread. You get to posts by Dan Wallace's uncle, who posts as N. LaRosa. It's N-L-A-R-O-S-A, all one word. I am Dan's uncle in West Palm Beach, Florida, and it's a personal matter, my nephew's death. Let's see. And see, this is he posts when they make up lies about the government assassinating him, then it becomes a public matter because they're lying to people and making some kind of movie. See, now, that means that the We Are Change people were spinning this like the government assassinated Dan Wallace. And what happens when Dan Wallace dies? Well, Luke Rudkowski, the guy who got Dan Wallace into 9/11 Truth in the first place, ends up taking control of the organization and renaming it We Are Change, and then gets to piggyback off Dan Wallace's name for the next number of years. Dan Wallace is rolling in his grave right now because of every time Luke Rudkowski says or posts the words, "Rest in peace, Dan Wallace." Quite seriously. And as soon as Dan dies, within a matter of weeks, Luke Rudkowski is with Dan Wallace's girlfriend, who had been with him for years. And Luke takes control of the finances of We Are Change, over the donations, and all that kind of such. Now, N. LaRosa, here's another post by N. LaRosa, says, "Yes, I do know Sabrina, and I have many questions for her. I will deal with her face to face, not on forums, her and Luke." Alright. And, alright, that's about it for that one. Okay, now here is a post from forums.randi.org/showtread.php lowercase t equals sign 96495. This post by N. LaRosa. Danny was a person that would listen to both sides and would let someone explain to him things, but I think his emotions and Luke telling him every day since he met him that the government did it made him believe it. He was really just looking for answers. He only knew Luke for 3 or 4 months. This was all pretty new to him. From what I know, Sabrina Rivera manages all the money coming in for the fundraising of and selling t-shirts for the Feel Good Foundation and We Are Change donations. She claims all the money goes to the Feel Good Foundation, but I think it's a lie. There is so much more that I won't say unless it needs to be that she has done to make me think it's a lie. She needs to stop lying and claiming Danny's father was her family member, and we have asked them to stop speaking for Danny because he can't speak for himself anymore. Now, I'm actually unsure if New York 9/11 Truth turned into We Are Change after Dan's death, or if that was a split that happened before Dan died, and if Dan actually founded We Are Change, because I have also heard that Dan Wallace was the original founder of We Are Change, period. And if that's true, then every time Luke Rudkowski gets introduced as the founder of We Are Change, he should seriously just be ashamed of himself as a disgusting human being for doing such a thing and taking credit for something he didn't do, if that's the case. Alright, right now we're getting into the history of We Are Change, how it started, the mysterious death of its founder, Dan Wallace, and what exactly is going on now in We Are Change and how this all connects and why it all matters. What's going on right now? Stuff like that. I see in the chat room there is some sort of comment from somebody about Mark Derrick, because that's my name in the chat room, is Mark/Derrick, in case some people don't know. That I don't know why we should trust you, or you seem suspicious, or something to that effect. Well, I don't really know why I seem suspicious. I have no idea what would seem suspicious about me. I mean, I've been running a chapter of We Are Change Oshkosh now for about 2 years, and you can go see all of my work that I've done online at youtube.com/wearechangeoshkosh. You can see that I'm an activist out there in the field doing what needs to be done. And to top it all off, if you want to talk about suspicious, what's suspicious to me is that most of the quote-unquote truth community won't publish certain pieces of my work. That's what's suspicious to me. So you can be suspicious of me all you want, but I don't really feel that that's founded. I mean, I can't really do anything to change that, but if you want to be suspicious, go ahead, be suspicious. And in all reality, you should be suspicious of everybody. Don't just trust what anybody says. Look into the information. And, if you want to become unsuspicious of me, look into the information that I present, and I'm sure that you're going to find that if I did make a mistake, it's an honest mistake. It's not like I'm misrepresenting information. So that's basically where that's at. And as far as the issues that I cover that nobody else will, go to youtube.com/wearechangeoshkosh and watch all the videos in the Jerry Kane series. And you will just see an abundance of information that only one place online was willing to publish that I sent it to, and that was Federal Jack. Only place that would publish those videos. Nobody else will touch it. Not Alex Jones, not Jack Blood. Nobody that I sent it to will touch that stuff. Now, as far as Dan Wallace's death, so like I said, we have somebody who is involved in the original truth movement, the founding of We Are Change. He founds We Are Change, and he has no reason to ever stop. He's got every piece of motivation to go and go and go and never quit and only press for the truth and the real truth. And he's on the verge of making a documentary film. And he's one of the leaders of the 9/11 truth movement, and he's a first responder. As soon as that film was released, that kid was going to blow up like nobody's business. You think they could let that happen? Just like you think they could let Bill Cooper get as big as he was going to get? Because Alex Jones had to get as big as Alex Jones is now. That was all part of the plan from day one. And knowing that to be the case, of course, they couldn't let Bill Cooper gain more popularity. That can't happen. Bill Cooper was around before Alex Jones was around. He had a big enough fan base. He had people that were doing things all over the country, infiltrating Freemasonry and bringing forth real information by doing so. And what happened to Bill Cooper? They killed him. Why did they kill him? Well, in my opinion, one of the main reasons absolutely had to be because Bill Cooper was Alex Jones before Alex Jones was Alex Jones. And they couldn't have somebody who already had a big listener base, who had standing and credibility in the truth community, in the research community, whatever, anti-New World Order community, whatever you want to call it. Because they were about to make Alex Jones blow up. And Bill Cooper had predicted 9/11 before Alex Jones and more accurately. And he also did an expose on Alex Jones, calling Alex Jones out for what he truly is, being a sensationalist and fearmonger and gatekeeper. No, you think they were going to let that guy who's already bigger than Alex Jones at that time, you think they're going to let that guy continue to keep sucking air and continue to expose each piece of fraudulent BS that Alex Jones does throughout history when he's got that kind of standing already in the research community? They couldn't have that. And the same thing here with Mr. Dan Wallace. You see Dan Wallace is gone, and you see who takes his place. Luke Rudowski. Somebody who is either on their side from day one or who is able to be manipulated into doing whatever they want, just like a politician in the United States. It's exactly how they work. They rule from behind the scenes, and they rear people to rule the affairs of government and legislative offices, and they keep track of these people, and they make sure that they have record and proof of certain compromising positions, so to speak, that these people put themselves in. And they use things like that and things like bribery and blackmail to get what they want on votes and to push policy one way or another. So, you see Dan Wallace taken out of the picture. You see Luke Rudowski come into the picture. And what happens so very quickly after Luke Rudkowski comes onto the scene in We Are Change? Well, within a very short period of time, Luke Rudkowski is seen all over YouTube, all over the internet. And what is he doing? He's confronting politicians. He's involved in these, ballsy actions, if you will, standing up, fighting for truth, doing what's right. And the whole time, yelling what? What's coming out of his mouth? Rest in peace, Dan Wallace. Dude, Dan Wallace should do a somersault in his grave every time you use his name, Luke Rudkowski, for your own retarded, selfish purposes. So Luke gets put into power in We Are Change. He gets put into power. He gets all over YouTube. He gets, media time, stuff like that. He's the one that giving speeches at the rallies, this kind of thing. He's all over the internet. He's on Alex Jones's show. He's on Jack Blood's show. He's on most of the radio shows in the quote-unquote alternative research communities, broadcast. So he blows up and becomes what you call a celebrity truther, or what I call a celebrity truther, which you can call him that too, because that's what he is. Him and Alex Jones and Jack Blood and Leonard Horowitz and Michael Tessarian and people of that kind of ilk, they are celebrity truthers. And they're not real. They're not really on our team. They're not really fighting the New World Order, and they need to be exposed for what they are. Now, after Luke gets so much press, what happens next? Luke Rudkowski gets a film deal with Alex Jones and Infowars.com for 9/11 Chronicles Truth Rising. So, let's back this up and get this straight so nobody out there is confused, alright? Dan Wallace, victim's family member and 9/11 first responder. Every reason to go all the way and get to the real truth no matter what it costs him. About to make a film, rising star in the truth community. They Bill Cooper his ass. Keeping in mind that Dan Wallace was about to release his documentary film, which would have slingshotted him into celebrity truther status, and he would have been a celebrity truther, the only celebrity truther who would have been a real truther. They could not have that. He's about to release a film that's going to slingshot him to stardom in the truth movement. What happens when he's dead? Luke Rudkowski gets a film deal with Infowars.com and Alex Jones to produce a film that slingshots Luke Rudkowski into the key position, being king activist for We Are Change and 9/11 Truth. King shit, king activist in the anti-New World Order movement. Because, Alex Jones being, the radio host and whatnot, he's the conspiracy king. But as far as, the grassroots organizing level, Luke Rudkowski was put in that position as number one man on the streets, being a real 9/11, a quote-unquote real 9/11 truther. So, you can see how this all fits together and where this is going. At least I hope you can. Now, after Luke Rudkowski comes to power and gets his film deal with Infowars, then you just see We Are Change as an organization continue to blow up over the next year, year and a half. And then what happens? Well, then we have all these allegations that start to surface regarding Luke Rudkowski and the finances of We Are Change. And there's also another issue that started to surface right around that same time, and That was the issue of Craig Fitzgerald being a 32nd degree Freemason. And it'd be interesting to see which one happened first. But regardless, those issues both happened around the same time period. And the point is that after We Are Change has a real good run, and Luke has, a good couple years of sitting on top of the mountain and traveling around the country and doing interviews and having his face, shown on a bunch of websites and all over YouTube, and even making some actual, getting his face on some actual mainstream type channels for little bits, here and there, stuff like that, yeah. Then, all of a sudden, here come the allegations about Luke and the finances. What happened to the money, Luke? What happened to the money, right? So, here you see this figurehead, Luke Rudkowski, who they've built up, being accused of stealing or misappropriating matters of thousands of dollars, over $10,000 even, possibly tens of thousands. And Louis B. of Crotch Shot Radio put out the evidence at crotchshotradio.com, and you can actually go there and you can see the Chase Bank records showing the transfers from the We Are Change PayPal chip-in account to pay for Luke Rudkowski's college tuition. Now, last I checked, Luke Rudkowski's college tuition was not We Are Change business. Maybe I'm crazy. So, people started to ask questions, and Louis B., for one, became quite vocal and angry at this, and honestly, who could really blame him? I mean, if I found out that the organization that I was a part of, the leader had been, possibly stealing thousands of dollars, and if I found out that I belonged to an organization and the donations were being embezzled, and the leader of the organization was stealing thousands of dollars, and the donations were supposed to be going to 9/11 first responders, and we were supposed to be using that money to purchase activist equipment and things like that to help the cause of what we're doing. And, that's going to his pocket to pay for his school and to, pay for his gas and whatever at the gas station. Oh, no, sir. That's not going to fly. Not one bit. So who could blame anybody for being mad about it and wanting that question answered? So once I came across that information, I was like, all right, let's do some investigating here. Investigated that. It appeared to absolutely be true. I saw the Chase Bank records, and I was convinced. So I began a campaign to see what was going on with Luke Rudkowski and the finances. And this was after, that, and, the evidence had just become overwhelming between that, and then I was also researching Craig Fitzgerald being the 32nd degree Freemason at the time. And so I decided to organize a call-in bomb to Kevin Barrett's radio show, Truth Jihad Radio, when he was supposed to have Luke Rudkowski and a slew of other people on. And this call-in bomb was majorly successful. Called in, and before Luke was brought on the air, one of the callers got through and wanted to ask about Craig Fitzgerald and Luke and the money, and Luke never even showed up for the show. And if you want to hear that show with call after call after call of people calling in to Truth Jihad Radio with Kevin Barrett, questioning, people trying to get answers on Luke Rudkowski if he'll ever finally get on the phone, and he doesn't, by the way. But if you want to hear that show, which is it's a great show, you'll laugh your ass off, I promise you. Go to youtube.com/Derek in the Midwest and look for the audio under the uploads tab titled "Call-in Bomb to Question Luke Rudkowski about finances," or "Call-in Bomb to Kevin Barrett Show to Question Luke Rudkowski," something to that effect. It's at youtube.com/Derek in the Midwest. It's a 2-part audio, and like I said, to me, it's gut-bustingly funny. It really is. And then the very next day, what happened was, since Luke never showed up for that show, that was a Saturday, Luke was scheduled to be on a radio program the next day, which was Sunday, of course. And so when I found that out, I was like, oh, well, let's organize it again, see if we can throw it together on the fly and do this up. So I try to organize another call-in bomb to confront Mr. Lukey Dookie about what's going on. And this time we get one when Luke is supposed to come on. One call gets through because they announce we're going to be right back with Luke Radowski, so people start calling in. So one of our callers gets through, and Luke isn't on the air, and they take the call instead of going to Luke because Luke wasn't there yet, just didn't show up. Suspicious much? No. Call gets through and asks a question about Luke and finances, yada yada, and they're like, well, Luke isn't, he's here right now, he's supposed to be here, but he's not here. So anyway, that one call was unsuccessful. However, this was a 24-hour radio marathon, and an hour and a half after he was scheduled to show up, he actually did show up for an interview and came on the radio at that particular broadcast station. And when he came on the radio, we were still listening and we were still ready to go. So we started calling again, and finally, after 2 years, now keeping in mind 2 years, people had been up Luke Radowski's ass about the finances. What's going on, Luke? What's going on? No answer. Luke Radowski stonewalling stuff, silent for 2 years, not showing people financial records. The ones he was showing were incomplete and missing pages, and it was ridiculous. So, finally, Luke is forced into a corner to publicly address the situation. What does he do? Luke admits that he took the money from the We Are Change chip-in, from the PayPal, and he did indeed use that money to pay for his tuition to college. However, what he says was he did this, and this is what he did. He says that he didn't steal it because this is what happened. Luke claims that sometimes his student aid for college, sometimes his student aid check gets there late. So what does he have to do? He has to dip into the We Are Change donation money to pay for his college tuition and replace it when his student aid check gets there. Well, you know what, Luke Radowski? That's 100% illegal. That's absolutely illegal in every sense. And if you're like, well, I put it back. Why is that illegal? It's not a big deal. Why is it? Oh, really? It's not a big deal. Well, Luke, what if you did something retarded and got caught with some drugs between that time and the time your student aid got there, and you got your dippy ass kicked out of school? Now you don't get any student aid, and now you just dicked first responders out of $10,000 or some odd dollars. How do you feel now? And that's exactly why you can't do that in the first place, even if you did replace the money. So bottom line is Luke Radowski needs to have absolutely nothing to do with any sort of finances or organization type position, or I should say organizer type position in We Are Change. Period. Luke Radowski needs to be made to the point where if they let him show up to meetings, he's lucky. Now, why this is happening? Think about this. Like I said, keeping in mind that the information about Craig Fitzgerald being a 32nd degree Freemason came out right around the time that Luke, and the finance information was starting to get big. People are starting to question that. Now, they oust Luke for this misappropriation of funds or embezzlement or thievery, whatever you want to call it, right? But now what's happening? Luke is no longer a part of We Are Change, as I don't know if any of you know or not, or many of you know or not, but Luke Radowski is actually no longer officially a member of We Are Change NYC. He's not. And We Are Change NYC has actually created a new sovereignty statement separating themselves from Luke Radowski. And the sovereignty statement reads, We, the sovereign individuals of We Are Change NYC, have resolved that we are, will be, and always have been an independent entity from any individual or individuals who would seek to undemocratically alter or abolish the New York City chapter or its mission statement and code of conduct, or make any unilateral decisions in the name of We Are Change NYC, including but not limited to Luke Rudowski, We Are Change Inc., wearechange.org. We remain a sovereign and autonomous body from the decision-making process of any other chapter. So they're separating themselves quite clearly from Luke Rudowski. And if you look at who this We Are Change NYC group is, it's basically everybody else who was, the members of We Are Change New York in the first place, except Luke Rudowski. Basically, it's the same group, they just kicked out Luke, is essentially what the deal is. So now they're trying to make it look like, oh, hey, we're cleaning things up. We're kicking out the embezzlement guy, right? But no, remember, Craig Fitzgerald's a 32nd degree Freemason. Who's been getting popular in We Are Change NYC? Craig Fitzgerald. Who else? Danny Panzella. Also highly suspect to be a Freemason in his own right. Now, getting into this, let's take a look at an article that Craig Fitzgerald posted to my Facebook wall today. And I have no idea why he posted this to my Facebook wall, because this just dug him a bigger hole. This is an article out of the website Redacted. And the headline is, with Luke Rudowski's ouster, We Are Change are left with just that, leftover change. After years of suspicion and accusations by former and current members of We Are Change NYC, Luke Rudowski has been ousted, stemming from months, if not years, of internal conflict regarding the group's finances. Palpable tension between Rudowski and the body of members of We Are Change began in the weeks following their September 11, 2010 fundraiser for first responders. As the weeks turned into months following 9/11, fundraising events in September, members grew concerned, which turned into anger. From discussions with many from the group, this apparently was nothing new. Members reported that this was to become an annual trend. Questions would be raised concerning the finances following the 9/11 fundraising event, with the group at the point stonewalled. Tension rose, and by mid-November, Rudowski was refusing to appear at any of the We Are Change meetings to discuss the group's finances. By this time, Rudowski has ceased showing up at Ground Zero group actions held every Saturday for the last 5 weeks that members could recall. To those volunteers who had worked so hard putting in months of setup for the event or running the operations during the successful event, this was beyond acceptable for the group's members. 2 months was long enough to wait. One worried member of We Are Change met with Rudowski at a coffee shop near his Brooklyn residence on Saturday, November 6, 2010, to go over the bank statements and PayPal records in an effort to assess the financial situation. It was apparent in the statements that thousands of dollars were not accounted for. Most notably, absent from the accounting records were the PayPal statements. PayPal had been the source of all the We Are Change online fund drives over the years. Why hadn't any money from PayPal been transferred into the bank account? It seemed no funds from PayPal had ever been transferred into this We Are Change bank account. Rudowski could not explain when asked directly where the collected funds were. In the course of the meeting, which was recorded reluctantly but with his consent, Rudowski had no explanation as to current whereabouts of the group's funds, nor to questions regarding his lack of fiscal responsibility and accountability to the members and donors of We Are Change. Rudowski is quoted as saying, quote, "No one is going to stop me from doing what I want to do. I'm the only one who does anything, and I'm disbanding the group." Unquote. Beyond this statement, he had no explanation as to the current account balance, only showing $383. Later that evening at We Are Change's weekly meeting, the members were informed of the earlier meeting with Rudowski and listened to the recording of the fiscal meeting. At the conclusion of the group's meeting, the members issued a letter to Rudowski in which they found him to be in violation of their code of conduct, which he introduced in writing up the bylaws of We Are Change, giving him 14 days to bring all documents regarding finances to their next group meeting over the issue. On November 20th, 2010, Radowski attended the We Are Change weekly meeting to present his records. The group members were presented with an Excel spreadsheet listing expenses and a running tally of funds. At that time, the group was informed that Radowski used approximately $400 of We Are Change funds to purchase a camera, DV tape, and an external hard drive without the group's required consent. His reason for not getting permission for the purchases, he stated, was that the group was not meeting, so that he didn't have the opportunity to bring the expenditure to a vote. The meetings had been held as scheduled, but according to group members, Radowski had been absent from all subsequent meetings. In addition, the PayPal records requested for this meeting with the group were not available. Just 2 days before this November 20th meeting, the bank account showed only $383. By the end of the discussion with the group members, they were shocked to learn there was over $11,400 in the account. That raised concern and many questions by the members. Where did this money come from? Why had a large deposit been made 2 days before this meeting? The money came from a bank bag Radowski claimed he had been keeping at his house for the past 3 years. The funds and accounting, or lack thereof, was of great concern to the group members, yet it was at this time the consensus decision had been made wherein We Are Change notified Radowski that they no longer wished to work with him. When asked if he would divide and allocate the funds collected from collected donations and event proceeds to We Are Change to be placed into their new account as the group decided to continue on as We Are Change without him, Radowski responded that he would, quote, give some money, unquote, provided no one spoke of the internal conflict and details of the split. At that time, no deal had been formalized and agreed upon by the group, realizing it was key to moving forward. At the subsequent scheduled weekly meeting, the group's members' main agenda were their finances and the current problem, but again Radowski was absent. The group agreed and decided that most of the money needed to be donated as soon as possible. Charles Giles of the Feelgood Foundation was contacted, and the ball was set in motion. A few weeks later, Radowski was contacted personally by Charlie Giles on behalf of several 9/11 first responders in dire need of financial assistance, but unfortunately was told that money in the We Are Change bank account needed to go to the retention of an accountant, financial consultant, and a lawyer. First responder Mike McCormick was told the same thing that afternoon. They were also informed by Radowski that We Are Change had no authority to decide how money was to be allocated or used. Once again, the group's members were in both shock and awe as they learned of this response by Radowski to the first responders. Most had stated that they believed there was no justification to withhold such a large amount of money raised for the first responders. The yearly operating expenses were minimal in comparison to the now current and available funds in the account. First responders needed help. All attempts by his former group members to contact Radowski regarding the issue has not been fruitful. He continues to stonewall and or ignore members regarding the group's supplies, cameras, and funds. According to We Are Change, the group continues to operate on very limited funds the way it has once its inception. If it's any indication as to where this group is now going, on January 1st, 2011, We Are Change New York City took the new year and ground zero educational activism in full force, ready to greet the tourists and public, eager to educate them on the full story as to what happened on 9/11, the full story that the chairman of the 9/11 Commission claimed they did not receive themselves during their investigation. During the first We Are Change meeting of the year, a group of about 18 members ratified a sovereignty statement that was immediately published on their new website, wearechangenyc.org. In addition, they held elections, creating the office of Secretary Treasurer, as well as positions for fundraising and outreach directors in a swift move forward. They look forward to recruiting new members in a cohesive, productive build up to the 10th anniversary of September 11th, 2001. Now, this is absolutely a key piece right here, because this shows us exactly, and it is exactly as I predicted it would happen, what is going on with We Are Change New York. Of course, what's going on is this. And my reaction to Craig Fitzgerald posting this article on my wall is such. This is culminating exactly as I said it would. It's going to look like they quote-unquote cleaned up We Are Change NYC by kicking out the figurehead and thief Luke Radowski. They will now attempt to keep the focus on that and off of Craig being a Mason, and use this situation to continue to try to sell Craig as the real deal and to continue to try to sell Masonry as a positive thing. Who are the most active people at the top of We Are Change NYC who will end up looking like the heroes for cleaning up We Are Change NYC? Craig Fitzgerald, Danny Panzella, and possibly a few others who have most likely been with the group and in with that clique for quite some time. Look everyone, the Freemason was one of the guys in charge of bringing transparency to We Are Change New York City. Look at everything he does for the movement. He's a good guy. I mean, it's obvious. Keep proving me right. It works for me. Craig's response to that was, "You're a funny little man, Mark." And Matthew Lepasic's response to that was, "You should get your own radio show, Mark. Call it Delusional Tonight." Well, Matt, apparently you don't know. I have my own radio show. It's called In Search of the Truth. And right now I am exposing your dippy ass along with Craig Fitzgerald and Luke Rudowski. Have a good evening. Now, this is where we are at this point. We see from the beginning of Dan Wallace creating We Are Change and being murdered to Luke Rudowski taking over We Are Change from Dan Wallace and becoming a dictator of finances and policy, to Luke Rudowski being pushed out of his spot. And who pushed him out of his spot? Who, like I said, who quote unquote is cleaning up We Are Change? Why, it's the 32nd Degree Freemason and Danny Panzella and the rest of the crew who have been around with those people for quite some time. This shouldn't be shocking to any of you, and it should be proof to all of you that I've been correct this entire time about what is really going on with We Are Change NYC. This was all just one big work. In my opinion, it really was. It absolutely was. It was one big work to put a high-level Freemason in charge of the grassroots truth movement. Look at everything else this guy's involved with. The John Birch Society, who has been exposed over and over again for being founded and funded by the same people and monies who founded and funded the Council for National Policy. And we all know about the Council for National Policy if you listen to my show. So, between the ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry, the John Birch Society, and the fact that he's a member of just about every damn activist organization under the sun, my impression of what's going on with Craig Fitzgerald, based upon those things and based upon the comments that he made on his Facebook wall and based upon the photos that I've seen him in, all of those things, every single piece of evidence leads up to this being the case, that yes, absolutely, We Are Change New York City still is not cleaned up and is dirty and controlled at the top. And now, instead of Luke Rudowski being there and being in charge, instead of having somebody in charge of We Are Change NYC who, you know, the head group of the truth movement, instead of having somebody who fumbles words and can't speak for a damn, now they have somebody who is actually real intelligent, very well read, and well spoken in Craig Fitzgerald. I don't like Craig Fitzgerald, but I will give him, I'm not taking anything away from the guy. He's quite a smart man. He really is. And that's not to say that he uses it for a good thing. I really do believe he's here to subvert the movement. I know there's some people out there who are like, you know, you should probably not talk about Jones so much, or, you know, Craig, or We Are Change New York, or this or that or whatever, and this is the deal with all that stuff. It's not all I talk about. I talk about plenty of other stuff. I also cover the news. I also have other topics that I'll be doing exposés on my upcoming shows in the future. I will be covering my Jerry Kane information from the We Are Change Oshkosh YouTube. I'll be covering that whole story, that situation. I'll be having Donna Kane on the show as a guest, actually, as well, at some point in the near future. The widow of Jerry Kane. And I'll be covering plenty of other topics. There are other topics that I'm doing exposés on and all that kind of stuff that I'm getting ready to, that I have in the works, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, this is basically what it is. I mean, there are people right now in the movement that need to be exposed, and there are always going to be people in the movement that need to be exposed, and I'm always going to be exposing them. It's not all I talk about other things, but there aren't enough people in the movement that are willing to expose everybody. There are a lot of people that are willing to expose, oh, Alex Jones, and that's about it. Or maybe Alex Jones and We Are Change and one or two other Patriots like Len Horowitz, and one or two other people. But that's about it. There are other people that they won't touch. And that's nonsense. So I will continue to expose the people in the movement who need to be exposed. I'll continue to do exposés on these people when I'm done with Jones is an ongoing thing, but eventually I'm gonna kind of leave him behind because I'm gonna have to focus on a couple other things. But as far as Jones goes, I'm just about done with Jones, and you know I'll still do like some small things on him here and there, like if it comes up. But I mean, I'm not going to be like spending massive amounts of time on Jones too much, this or that. But since it's not going to be Jones, it will be somebody else at least partially. And after them, it'll be somebody else partially, and after somebody else, it'll be somebody else partially, and that'll just continue to happen. I mean, and I will continue to cover the news as well, and I will continue to do exposés on false flag terror attacks when they happen, things like that, on things like the Jerry Kane incident when they happen, all that stuff. So you will be getting an abundance of varying topics on this show. It's not always, just going to be talking about certain people, but this is what had to happen because this is what had to happen. I mean, I couldn't come out as Mark Youngworth from We Are Change Oshkosh and put all this information out, and I had to build a listener base and some fans and all that kind of stuff before I could actually drop this information. And over that period of time, I was sitting back letting more information come out and more information come out about We Are Change and about Alex Jones so I could build this all up and then, say, hey, I put this research out, show people I obviously do good research and that I'm somebody who's willing to go past the information that Jones is giving and on to the next level. So, I mean, there's a reason for all of that. I have I have a pretty good mapped out idea for the way that I want this all to go. At least, a loose outline. I mean, I don't have it mapped out show by show or anything like that, but I mean, I know how I want this to go, and I do have things planned and prepared, and it's not always going to be about the same people. But you will be hearing about other researchers that need to be exposed, and you'll also be hearing me cover news like I do often, and you will also be hearing exposés on other topics, such as the Zeitgeist movement. I'll be having some members of the Zeitgeist movement on within the next few weeks, and this is I was supposed to have them on, and they were actually sick, so they had to reschedule. But basically, these people found out, just like being, members of Zeitgeist, just like I was a member of We Are Change. It seems that Zeitgeist at the top is the same thing We Are Change is, just absolutely controlled by dictatorial policies and practices. And they got kicked out of the Zeitgeist movement coordinators for asking questions and demanding answers, and for demanding group involvement in policy making and in the direction that the movement was going. And Mr. Peter Joseph said, absolutely not. We're not going to have any of that independent thought kind of nonsense around here. You're gone. So, I will be having them on In Search of the Truth within the next few weeks, and that's some interesting information there about the Zeitgeist movement and how they found out that movement was controlled like I found out We Are Change was. And what the two individuals are, the woman is the former coordinator for the Zeitgeist Chicago chapter, and my male guest is the person who was in line for a coordinator position for Chicago and didn't get the position because he started asking questions along the similar lines of what the female coordinator was asking, and demanding group involvement and that everybody have a say in where the movement goes. So that should be an interesting interview as well. So that's where we're at basically with my show and what you'll be hearing from me in the future. I have been after Conspirituality to get back to me. I haven't had a return email from them in a while, and I know that, with musical artists, sometimes it goes that way, so I'm really not super discouraged or anything. We'll see what happens. I got to get back at them and send them an email, see what the hell's going on. And I do have a couple other guests lined up. I don't have the date nailed down, so I'm not going to announce them just yet, but there will be some other things, exciting things happening on In Search of the Truth in the very near future. I also want to talk about something that is going on that happened in my area the other day. I went down to Madison for this gigantic protest event in hopes of speaking and getting some information out that they wouldn't want thousands of people to hear, and that's exactly how many people I would have been speaking to. So I would have had 3 minutes to say whatever I please, and believe me, I would have said plenty. This is what the deal was. A CNN headline: Thousands march in Wisconsin over proposed budget cuts. Furor over a bill that would strip Wisconsin public employees of most of their collective bargaining rights and have them pay dramatically more for benefits drew at least 10,000 protesters to the state capitol on Wednesday and forced the cancellation of classes in one large school district because of the teachers' sickout. Republican Governor Scott Walker said he is dealing with the budget crisis. Employees and unions contend his bill is an assault on workers' rights. Walker is asking legislators to pass his budget repair bill to combat a $137 million shortfall through June 30th. An upcoming two-year budget for 2011 through 13 must address a pending $3.6 billion deficit, he said. In a budgetary scenario being played out in other cash-strapped states and municipalities, the legislation requires workers to cover more of their health care premiums and pension contributions, although supporters say local governments will decide on health care contributors for their employees. Legislation also requires collective bargaining units to conduct annual votes to maintain certification. Unions would lose the right to have dues deducted from worker paychecks, and collective bargaining can only cover wages. This bill has promoted protest from the public employees and from the supporters. On Tuesday, an estimated 13,000 people thronged to the Capitol, followed by 10,000 Wednesday. And Carla Vig said Carla Vig, spokeswoman for the Department of Administration. Unions said the number of protesters were much higher. Well, I was actually there. I definitely wouldn't say that there were more than 13,000 people there. At least not on the day that I was there. That's for damn sure. And the day that I was there was yesterday, by the way. So, long story short, the reason that I wanted to address this was when I went to the Capitol, we showed up, and unfortunately I didn't get to speak because there were so many people that were there that they literally had people signing up to speak, and they said that I probably wouldn't get to speak until about 6 or 7 p.m., and I had to leave before that, and they said that people would probably be speaking right up until around 9 or 10, if not later. And that's why they scheduled 2 days, today being the second day, as there will probably be people speaking today, and possibly even through tonight as well, and they can't vote until everybody has spoken. The problem is, in speaking with the people who were at the event protesting for and against this new legislation, it seemed that neither side of protesters were completely aware of the actuality of what's going on and of, what the other side's like. Basically, let me just break it down simply. The Republicans were pissed at the Democrats, and the Democrats were pissed at the Republicans, and neither of them completely understood what the real deal was. They both were only speaking about 50% truth. Both sides were exaggerating claims about what was in the bill or what wasn't in the bill, and the side of the Democrats was talking about Scott Walker threatened to have the National Guard come out over this and all that, and in all reality, that was a quote that was taken out of context and made it sound, like Scott Walker is this big dictator, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not for Scott Walker. Don't get that impression in the least, because that's not the case. All I'm saying is, both sides of the debate have no idea, in all reality, what the whole truth is. So all these people were doing were repeating what they heard on the news from their favorite politician or from their favorite broadcaster. They weren't actually reading the bill, they weren't actually looking into the information, and they certainly weren't really listening to each other's arguments. It was literally a bunch of nonsense. And it's exactly what the New World Order wants from protests. They don't want people showing up that actually know what's going on with legislation. They want people showing up who are half informed. So one half can misinform their half of people, and the other half can misinform their half of people. Neither sides get the complete story, and they're bitching over things and saying, oh, well, you guys are lying about this, and, well, you guys are lying about this. And it's like, well, that's because you have two gigantic groups of people that are doing nothing except for parroting what they see on TV or hear on the mainstream radio broadcasts. People need to start waking up to what is going on with the New World Order and the world around them. This is not a problem that can be solved even by voting for a third party. People need to start realizing your vote does not count. It hasn't for a very, very long time. So rather than putting all your energy into making these signs and bullhorning in front of, a Capitol building for a protest that isn't going to make a difference whatsoever, because whatever they're going to do with this bill. So, rather than putting your energy into that, maybe we should start putting our energy as a whole into more polite, intellectual discourse and debate and research, real research. I'm not talking about going to foxnews.com and reading the latest headlines either. I'm talking about going to multiple news sources, checking the stories against one another, reading legislation if you're going to speak about it, things like that. That is doing your due diligence as a citizen of any country. As a human being on this planet who should be here to try to keep this world uncorrupt and livable and peaceful and harmonious for all of humankind, that is what due diligence truly is. It's not reading the sports section for 10 minutes a day and calling yourself informed by the news. That's BS. So, to recap, we started with Dan Wallace, the true founder of We Are Change. Dan Wallace was a victim's family member and first responder on 9/11. Dan Wallace died because he overdosed on some unknown pills. Where he got these pills, I'm not sure. There are some unsavory rumors revolving around Sabrina Rivera about how he got those pills, which I'm not going to go into that because I can't confirm them and they are rumors. You can do your own research on that and see what you can find. But Dan Wallace, a true 9/11 truther, a true anti-New World Order activist, who had every drive and reason to never quit, murdered, Bill Coopered, if you will, and replaced with Luke Rudkowski, someone who would shoot to stardom just like Dan Wallace would have, because Dan Wallace was a main founder of the 9/11 Truth community, and he was about to release a documentary film. Dan Wallace was about to rise to stardom in the 9/11 Truth community, in the anti-New World Order activist community. And before this could happen, Dan Wallace dies untimely. Sabrina Rivera, Dan Wallace's girlfriend, her story changes 3 times, making 4 separate stories, none of which corroborate, obviously. Quite suspicious. Now, after this, after Dan Wallace is about to slingshot to stardom in the truth community and is held back by his death, Luke Rudkowski is made leader of We Are Change and takes credit for being the founder of We Are Change in many interviews over the next number of years. To this day, still takes credit for being the founder of We Are Change, which he is not. Luke Rudkowski, after being slingshotted to celebrity truther status, is then presented with allegations of embezzlement and misappropriation of funds, upwards of $10,000 from the We Are Change donation accounts for 9/11 first responders. Luke Rudowski stonewalls these questions for 2 years. Finally, I organize a call-in bomb, paint Luke into a corner, and get him on the radio to answer a couple of questions. I should say, actually, Louis B. I shouldn't say me. Louis B. was actually the one, I believe, who asked him the questions that day, who got through on that call. I organized the bomb, call-in bomb, but Louis B. is the one who actually got through and made the call. And what happened was, Luke admits to misappropriating the funds. So now, what's We Are Change NYC left to do? They have a thief in power as their leader. And also, they have Craig Fitzgerald, 32nd degree Freemason, running We Are Change NYC from behind the scenes, which you can find the information on that at youtube.com/Derek in the Midwest. Or you can go to, if you want a little bit more thorough explanation, you can do a search for the headline, We Are Change addresses prominent member Freemason pulls article. And just Google search that headline and you will find a link to my article. The 9/11 Truth Movement looks like it was corrupted early. Something that they probably knew was going to happen, the 9/11 Truth Movement, so they had to corrupt it. They did. Dan Wallace dies. They put in Luke Rudowski. Now, they have a 32nd degree Freemason who, after Luke gets accused of embezzlement and proven guilty of, the 32nd degree Freemason is the one who's been most active in We Are Change New York, who everybody in We Are Change New York is going to know as being always there for the group. And this guy is going to be the one who is now mostly in charge of We Are Change New York City, at least, basically a head organizer or one of the head organizers. Between him and Danny Panzella and, like I said earlier, the rest of the crew who has basically been shown to be tied intimately with Craig Fitzgerald and Luke Rudowski for the past number of years running. So that's where we are. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. It's been interesting. You've been listening to In Search of the Truth with Mark Youngworth, also known as Derek in the Midwest. I'm out of here.